I recently wrote an article titled "You're More Than a Number and a Type" for Talent Quarterly, and I actually thought about calling this article "The Enneagram versus Growth Mindset." And I wrote this because so many times, especially recently, I've been asked about my opinions on the growth mindset and also my opinions on the Enneagram. And I would say that what I'm speaking to here is not just the Enneagram, but any sort of typology or what we would describe as things that are used to describe personality. And in psychology, a personality are traits, things about you that are less likely to change over your lifetime. And there's a tremendous amount of research on those things. But what I want to suggest is that we need to be very careful in how we label people, especially if you love the growth mindset idea, which most of us do, and then also love some ways to simplify that. So let me just set this up very quickly. Is that in this article, what I attempted to set up in the beginning is that the growth mindset research and what Carol Dweck's work really informed so many of us about was that the way that people label themselves as either being fixed, changeable, or not, and if we can open people up to this possibility of that part of them is really open to change, changes everything. It's attached to so many positive kinds of variables in our lives and our work that's what's so powerful about this. And the way that we speak to people is really important in terms of affecting their mindset, whether or not they believe they're changed, as opposed to saying, I'm either smart or I'm not. I'm either good at math or I'm not. I'm either locked into this personality type or I'm not. Now, with holding the tension that there are traits that research out there would say that do stand relatively stable over time, things like extroversion and introversion or openness to experience, that we need to be very careful, especially when it comes to tools out there that may bring awareness, but may not have much of a research base in terms of whether or not they actually are traits, especially if we're going to label people. That's where I would think we need to be really careful. So I'm not against these things. I think we need to be careful. And face validity is a powerful thing, and I'll talk about this. So I just want to go through a couple of the points I made in the article. Why we love a growth mindset. This idea that the way that I speak, so if I tell my son, you are a very good soccer player, you're great at soccer, is very different according to the growth mindset research than me saying, you really have worked hard at this, because it opens up this possibility that he has actually worked at this as opposed to you're either good or you're not. Because then what does he do if he's bad at it? So why do we love this possibility of an introduction or an invitation into development? First of all, it unsticks us. A growth mindset gives us permission to see ourselves as changeable. It redefines us. Voices in our past that labeled us as smart or not, a certain personality or not, able to do something or not, or able to change or not, are replaced by voices that encourage us to work just as hard at learning from our failures or just our type, as well as our successes or the places where we feel stuck. That it opens us, using language with others, that we're no longer boxed into either being good or bad at something, that our minds can be open to the possibility that we can learn something and continue to learn and change over our lifetime. Now, why do we love types? First of all, it labels us. Let me read this because I'm better at just reading. We love shortcuts and even need them sometimes. I know that that's true. Without some intentional common language, self-awareness is like a funny house with confusing and distorting mirrors all around that provide little actual insight into who we are. So labels can't help us. It validates us. Face validity is a powerful thing. Like I said, things that make sense to us about ourselves or others when we read them draw our attention. Anything that causes us to say, how did it know to describe me that way, is really attractive, whether it's a personality test or a horoscope. And I'm just saying, like, there's certain truths to these things, but we have to be thoughtful and careful. If it sounds like us, it must be us, which may or may not be true. It simplifies us. Humans are complicated beings. We're made up of a lot of different variables, with traits, factors that are relatively stable, being one of them. Anything that simplifies our complexity is attractive as long as it confirms our existing biases or requires less work. So we have to be careful because deeper development requires a little bit more. So here are a couple of tips real quickly. Strategy 1, change our language. Labeling our children, spouses, coworkers, bosses as numbers or any other label can be reckless. And according to Dweck and other researchers on growth mindset, the way we speak actually matters. So we have to be careful. If we label someone a certain number, IQ, color, or type, we risk encouraging a fixed mindset, which not only will confine them to a box they might not need to occupy, but also confine everyone around them to that same label. It encourages a way of thinking that says, just deal with me the way that I am. And whether we believe that's true or not, the way that we talk can label someone that way. We can say like, "Oh, Rob, I don't believe that." But the way that we speak to people and giving them language without nuance into the developmental openness that's there. Integrate traits in development. I'm getting so excited about this. That half of there's a lot of good research on some of the traits that are there, and there's some great tools out there that have this solid foundation around these things that are relatively stable. But at least half of our developmental journey is up for grabs. And so thinking about how these things are less likely to change, like if you're more introverted, how is that changing, or how does that impact other people around you, is when it becomes interesting. And in what situations are you more introverted? And then finally, strategy 3 is see development as a process and not as a type or a destination. The personality typography that's been studied the most. I'm not going to go deep into that, but let me read the first paragraph. Development is a process of learning across our lifetime, not a destination. Arrivals matter, but when we get there, we usually start again. For most of us, a truer connection to our reality involves the power of moments of completion alongside moments of continuation. And then finally, this is my last kind of statement, is there is likely some truth to our type, but we're more than a number. So are the people in whom we're invested. And so I think just being careful and thoughtful about our language, and just think about the next time you say, "Oh, he's a 3." I don't even know what that is, but he's a 3. Oh man, we got to be careful when we say that, because he may or may not be a 3. And just to be thoughtful is really important, because it actually can open a person's mind to the possibility of change. So I hope that's helpful, and let's all get out there and get intentional about our development. That's